And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and of course, I am also its creator. So, my guest for today is actually one of the earliest speakers I've actually followed when I first started doing this around a year back. So,
Mhm.
he is a sought after speaker, trainer, and executive coach specializing in leadership and innovation currently based in Singapore, who designs and deliver innovation, soft skill, leadership management workshop in person and virtually. So without further ado, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Mark Stuart. How are you, Mark?
I'm very good, thank you. Very happy to be here.
You're very welcome. Oh, and just to let you guys know, Mark actually just received his Singapore permanent residency this year. So congratulations, belated congratulations to you. I think I've wished you on Facebook, but at that time there
Yes,
was so many people. So yeah.
it's been a long process, but very happy to have it now, and I guess benefit from having PR here. Yeah,
As a permanent resident of 15 years, I get where that come from. So
yeah.
yeah, welcome to the club.
Thank you.
All right. So this is going to be your first question, Mark. So
Mm.
how do you define home? So aside from your loved ones now, you have a lovely wife and you have two beautiful children. I
Mm.
actually want to know if geographically, do you still feel home is in the UK or in Singapore?
It's a big first question.
Thank
How
you.
do you see home? I think anyone who travels and lives away from their country of sort of birth or more upbringing. I don't think it matters where you're born as much, but where you spend most of your formative years in childhood. Um, when I left England about 15 years ago, and I went to Australia for 3 years first. And all the time, England was still home. Even though I was living there, I was very happy there. Came to Singapore, first few years, England's still home. Um, I think now I've been in Singapore 11 plus years. I see Singapore as home. I still sometimes call England home. It's a difference. Even though I've got no plan to move back there and PR in Singapore, I don't see myself moving probably till kids go to university or something, which is a long way away still. Um, you've always got that thing where you naturally call the place you're brought up home, but realistically, when I think about where home is or where I need to return to if I'm traveling, it's Singapore. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. I share the exact same sentiments. I've been away from Singapore now. It's going to be my third year due to the
Mhm.
pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really do miss the Lion City too. Okay,
Yeah.
for those of you who are watching this for the very first time, Global Citizens is an online platform whereby I invited individuals who has experienced a multicultural life. Primarily, of course, it advocated third culture kids like myself who actually grow up outside of my own parents' passport country and my own parents' culture. The main purpose of this is intercultural awareness, intercultural studies, but at the same time, it's also give a sense of representation for people who are misunderstood because of living their life this way.
Mm.
Because people will think that, oh, this is like an extended holiday. It is not. I'm sorry to tell you guys this is because we live a life whereby we feel like a foreigner, like an outcast, sometimes even in our own homes. And sometimes we have to adjust how we speak, how we think, how we present ourselves. Is because we just want to feel accepted. So this is the main purpose of this platform. So okay, I will pass the spotlight back to Mark though. So
Mm.
during your 15 years away from the UK,
Mm.
right? Have you ever dealt with loneliness in the foreign country? And what is your experience coming back home after that? Or as we call it, the reverse culture shock?
Mm. I think most people experience loneliness at some point. Um, I know I did when I first moved to Australia more. I was fortunate I had an aunt and uncle and some cousins there, so I had a small family network. But you don't have anybody else. So all you have is your work colleagues. So your work colleagues become your social group, which has its pros and cons. Um, but I was fortunate. We had a great work group there, but you've got to throw yourself into the community a little bit more. You've got to find a hobby or something, or a sports team or an interest group, because if not, you run the risk of everything being through work. And then at weekends, what happens then? So you've always got that challenge. It was a bit easier coming to Singapore because I came to Singapore with work. So I moved over with other people from the Australian office. That again gave you a grounding. But you will experience it in most cases. So anyone who is thinking about moving, you have to be prepared for the reality of losing your main friend base from at least a social perspective, but you won't stay as good friends with all of them as time goes on. So you start to lose your friend base at home whilst trying to build one up in a different country. And the challenge there is really, I guess, how similar is the culture to where you've moved from. If it's similar, it's a bit easier to, I guess, build that friend base. If it's a different culture, then it's a bit more difficult. So there is a challenge. And then reverse culture shock. I didn't have it as much. I was fortunate. I mean, I moved first from England to Australia, which is quite similar culture. So there wasn't too much difference. The main difference was I'm now stuck in this position where in Singapore and Australia, I still find it too hot, but I go home and I find it too cold. I'm stuck in this middle ground where I almost don't belong back home because I find everything too cold. But then in Singapore, I still find it too hot. So I don't know where I stand there. I think the difference is you realize when you go home that all the things you were familiar with might have now gone. Shops have closed down, friends have moved on. We're all getting on with our lives. We're all moving away from where we lived 15 years ago. And the longer you stay away, when you come back, it's like, oh, I'll meet up with, actually, who shall I meet up with? I haven't kept in touch with people for a while. So it's not so much culture shock. It's more a realization that it's no longer your home, to go back to your first question.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I actually experienced that too. Of course, I when I was invited for a podcast for one of my alumni, she actually asked
Mm,
me, if you can go to a new place, what would it be?
mm.
Anywhere that is not within the cold climate. I am terrified of cold weather. I am terrified of it. When I was in South Korea, my sister
Mm,
and my cousin, who was about to pick me up, actually asked me, "How was your face when I just reached the airport?" And I was wondering,
mm.
what does that mean? What does it? What does the matter?
Yeah.
So when I actually went out, and the weather was at that time was -16, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, the wind blew in my face. I was like, boom, okay, it's the feeling that
Yeah.
there's a giant salmon and flung up and smack you in the face. That's how
Yeah.
I felt. So I'm like, yeah, I'm terrified of the cold weather. I'm going in. I'm going in. I'm scared.
I kind of
So
miss it. I don't want to live in it permanently, but it'd be nice if Singapore had two seasons at least, without just being dry and wet. At least South Korea has seasons, and Hong
we have
Kong has a
rainy weather.
couple. Yeah,
We have rainy weather now. Outside my house is raining actually.
exactly. See, that's variation.
All right. Okay. Well, we don't get to choose our country's weather. Hopefully,
No, we don't. Not at
I
all.
don't know. Hopefully, there will be some device for that. But hey, I don't think we want to tamper too much with
For now, there's the
the.
aircon if you really want to feel cold. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah, you mentioned earlier when you moved to Australia to Singapore. Yeah, it's
Mm,
because of work, right?
mm.
So, do you mind sharing with us your career journey? Yes, because I remember you were an investment banker for 15 years. Then, when in Singapore, you become a professional speaker. So, do you mind sharing with us your career journey like, and how did it leads to a virtual speaker and a trainer on innovation?
Yeah, I guess it's not a natural journey. but I've never liked to do things in normal ways. I've kind of rebelled against
No,
that a bit.
normal is
So
overrated. Normal is overrated.
yeah, okay, I'll try and give you the brief version because it was unconventional from even leaving high school. So like I guess a lot of people at 18, I had a university place lined up in England, and then just for practice or for a challenge from my father, there was a job going for an investment bank to join an operations trainee scheme. And he said, you should just apply for it because you've never really written a job letter before. So it's like, well, I've got nothing else to do this summer, so I might as well. 5 rounds of interviews later, I got offered a job, which I wasn't expecting. And then I said, well, who else has got jobs? They said, there's 10 of you. And I said, right. And they said, 8 of you are graduates and 2 of you have just done your A levels. It's like, so if I go to university, I'll still get the same type of job that I can get now. And they said, well, yeah, we'll pay you the same rate. So I started working at 18. Then I was supposed to move to America at about 20, but I got turned down by immigration because I didn't have a visa, a degree. So I thought, right, if this is going to be my future life where I can't go overseas because I haven't got a degree, I'll go back to university. So I went to university thinking I'll find my true calling at university, and then went straight back into banking again because I had experience, which no one else did. So I got offered a job. So then I did that for a few years, and then I quit my job at 26 and traveled the world for a year to try to find what I really want to do. Traveled for a year, spent 6 months in Australia, which you can probably see was leading up to what happened. 6 months there, came into Singapore twice. So around Asia, Australasia, US, those types of countries. Came back, went back into my old job in banking, and then reached a point where I was about 30 where it's like, right, time for me to go overseas. So at that point, I took a job in Sydney with the same bank. They had a job going there. I wanted to go and got into Sydney. So that was good. Had a great time in Sydney, but then the financial crisis hit in 2009. So Sydney, which was really most of what we call post-trade. So I wasn't a trader. I was doing everything post-trade. That was mostly supported out of Sydney for tax reasons, so tax breaks. So all the banks had lots of staff in Sydney. Financial crisis hit, tax breaks went, everyone moved. So client-facing jobs to Singapore, other jobs to Mumbai and Shanghai. So at that point, I was deciding, do I fight to stay in Australia and leave the bank? Do I had a job offer in the US, back in England or Hong Kong, but there's also Singapore where most of my teams were going. So in the end, I came to Singapore to help set things up and never left. So how did I become a speaker? Not a natural switch, I'll tell you that. I did it, I guess I got slightly disillusioned with corporate life, if I'm being honest. The banks that I worked for in many ways were fantastic. I couldn't do what I do now if I didn't have that experience. And there's always the argument of, should a corporate trainer have corporate experience if they're going to train corporate employees? That's a wider question for a different day, but I always believe they should do. So it gave me the backing and the experience I probably wouldn't have had. But I wanted to leave. I knew I wanted to leave. My wife wanted to leave her job as well. So I think we just got engaged in Bali and we were debating the big life choices. And it's like, right, let's quit. But we'll give it a year and we'll see what we want to do. I knew I wanted to do something into people development because that's what I enjoyed more than other parts of the job, was trying to develop staff. So took a few trainer courses like train the trainer. I'd been doing it at work more and more and thought we'd give that a go. So we quit, went back to Bali for 6 months to take a break, write some content. That ended up being 15 months. And then we started to get busy, so we moved back to Singapore, and it just grew from there. So training went into speaking, and you realize you can get paid more speaking than you do for a day of training, even though I still do mostly training because they give you different things. Speaking is more about giving inspiration to people and hoping that it worked. Your only real reaction sometimes is testimonials and feedback and looking at faces. Training, you can make more of a deeper impact just because you have more time. Yeah. So that's a short story of a long story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry. Too long of it, and I will lose my broadcast time, so not to worry. That's a beautiful summary. First off, shout out to your wife, Mrs. Liana Stewart. So,
Yes, I can see she's on and raising questions or points. Yeah.
oh, okay. Should a corporate trainer have corporate experience if he's training corporate employees? You decide, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess just to look at both sides. I know some very good trainers who don't have the experience, but I know some clients who look for people with experience. So, yeah,
Yeah,
different clients want different things. Yeah.
better to have it than don't, right?
Yeah, in an
Okay.
ideal world. Yeah.
All right. This question is actually based on one of your past speech that I've actually listened several times.
Okay.
So I'm going to modify it a bit though.
Hmm.
In today's society, is data or empathy? Which one is actually the priority, with that people should have when running a business?
Sorry, data or empathy?
Okay, let's add a third one. Maybe gold, data, empathy, or gold. Which one would you prioritize as number one, number two, and number three?
Sorry, what was the third one? Gold.
Gold, GOLD, gold.
Gold.
Yes.
Right. As far as money,
Yeah, sure.
data and empathy are interesting. That's an interesting question because I do talk about both.
Yep.
I was literally doing a workshop on Thursday, just this a week, where we talked in one half about emotional intelligence and changing leadership styles and the importance of empathy. Um, but then in the afternoon, we looked at one of my leadership models, which looks a lot at being able to understand data. So I guess which do you need? You need both. It depends partly on what level you're at. Because if you're a senior leader, I'd argue that empathy is more important. From a leadership side, in today's world, empathy is more important. And that's purely because in the leadership level, you're not always doing the day-to-day work. You're more overseeing things. You're responsible for a department or a division where you'll have data experts. The challenge is not enough leaders know about data and what the possibility is and what the potential is. So you need it in both. I'd say you need to, at the minimum, understand what data really means, what data you have within the firm, and what your data strategy could be. But then you'll never get people on board to execute without the empathy. Gold, hopefully, is the result of having empathy and using data well. But ultimately, I will give the nice fluffy answer of it's all about the impact which we make and not the money that comes from it. Make enough impact and the money normally follows. That's a nice, safe answer. But the gold
It's
is always
actually,
nice. The comment
I
coming in
mean,
about Bitcoin, it's still a speculation.
it's not only the same. I think it's supposed to be in a sense, the right kind of mindset is because
Mm,
you always want to deliver the utmost value to your client, to your customer space,
yeah.
before you actually get the result. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful answer. Don't worry
Yeah, I mean,
about
you
that
kind of
though.
need empathy to even plan a
Absolutely.
data strategy. I mean, what are you going to do with your data? You're planning to enhance an AI-driven chatbot using data of past purchases and preferences. you need to have empathy to understand your customers to build out the data strategy. So really they go hand in hand. People who can do both, well, that's in very short supply, I think still.
Okay. No, don't worry. Don't worry. That's a I love that answer. I love that answer. And I think it's supposed to be a mindset that should be emulated.
It should be the mindset, yes, in an ideal world.
All right. Okay. Nowadays, with the rise of pandemic, one of the trends that we see is remote working, remote
Mhm.
hiring. Yeah, is
Yeah.
it basically, in a sense, it became. Some people have called it the basis of to create the ideal work life. Is that if you don't make money while you're sleeping, then you are never going to retire, kind of thing. Because
Hmm.
due to the different time zone, you can have people who are still working even though you could be sleeping. So
Yeah.
I actually want to ask you this: is that do you feel this such changes is good or bad, and how should one anticipate it if with this kind of revolution in the work life? Is because like it or not, a lot of time people nowadays adapted a certain way of life due to the
Mm.
pandemic, and it has become something that is much more favored as compared to how it was in the
Yeah.
past. So yeah, how should one anticipate though for or prepare themselves for such changes? Because
Mm.
there can be those from my dad's generation who might not be able to willingly accept such a remote work
Yeah.
or lifestyle whereby they are not in full control of it.
Yeah. It's something that it's an interesting one because obviously we're seeing some major changes now. In Singapore, at least we've had DBS and UOB come out with a new strategy to say that most employees can now work remotely 40% of the time, which doesn't take you long to work out. That's 2 days a week. So that's a clear strategy that they've put out for the majority of workers. So that's interesting. But what they're also doing is they're starting to look at different opportunities for where people can actually work remotely. So it's not always from home. Even though it sounds really nice that, oh, we can all work flexibly. And you always hear about companies that have always been 100% remote. And they come out and say, we've been 100% remote since inception and it works fine. And it's like, yes, but when you start in that way, it becomes culture. And it's never been anything different. When you hire people, they know what they're getting into. It's remote, and they need to have a platform to allow them to work effectively remotely. What we've seen, though, is half the world being pushed into remote working rather than choosing to work for a company that offers 100% remote. And therefore, especially in places like Singapore and Hong Kong, where property is so scarce, and a lot of people live in smaller family homes, multi-generational homes. We don't have the convenience often of having an office where we can work quietly from, especially if now your partner is working from home. So that's 2 offices of quiet which you need. Your parents could be working from home, or your kids could be studying from home. So the actual convenience isn't that convenient. Yes, it's nice we don't have to commute, but I think the shift won't be permanent until other options are available. In bigger countries like the US, some of the big firms are trying to almost put centers in some major states where employees, rather than going into a main office, can live a bit more sort of further away from the main office, but still go to a local center where other employees from that company go, or they're renting out whole co-working floors so people can choose to go to a co-working space to get away from a noisy home. So I think that type of distributed model is going to be the future, more than the fact we all work from home, we all fight over Wi-Fi, our electricity bills go up, but we don't get compensated for it, but we're supposed to offset it against less commuting costs. So I think we're in this transition phase where we've been pushed into it. Some companies will force everybody back. They'll lose some staff because staff now see they have the power and they can start fighting. and negotiating it into contracts and everything else. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out. Facebook are saying they're going to pay people less if you choose to work from a country with a lower standard of a living. So that would be an interesting one to see what happens, because other companies are saying we'll pay the same rate, but will they really? Or will they say, if you're living in a developing country, should we still pay you a developed country wage? Because the fact is, history of wages, there was always something built in to where the office was located. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next sort of 9 to 18 months to see where things actually settle down.
On that note, I actually have one application to Facebook at the moment. In case you guys do want to hire me, I'll gladly return to Singapore. So please don't cut my salary.
Right, okay. Future Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, I have the proof here, guys. You guys can't do anything. All right. All right. Yeah.
Mm.
So as you mentioned, yeah, about the how the revolution of the work industry. Okay.
Mm.
I one of the main area that I actually always want to represent is the future generations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm that old. I'm 28. So, but the thing is that I think this is my generation. So this is
Mm.
why it needs to be done for the upcoming
Yeah.
one. So you are the father of two lovely binational children, right?
Yeah.
So unlike in the West, though, there's a mindset thereby in the East, maturity in Asia is not based on how capable you are in making your own decision, because you are now independent as an adult,
Mm.
but how obedient you are to your parents. Do you mind sharing with us about your own approach to your children? By the way, your wife Liana is here, so if she wants to
Yeah, I've got to be
contribute,
very careful. I need to be very careful now. We have a slightly different approach. We don't look at it East versus West. My wife
yep,
Liana is Singaporean, born and bred.
yep,
Um, I'm obviously from England, been in Asia 11 years. We adopt a parenting style that meets our values. I think that's the best way of explaining it. So we want them to, I guess, explore and create. And if they want to go into the arts, they go into the arts, rather than the traditional maths and science. Liana's whole family, that it's most of them are in the artistic side of things, either through graphics or art. So it would be a natural place for them to go into. But really, I'd support them whatever they want to do. And I know that sounds corny, and sometimes that program speech. They can do whatever they want to do. Yes, but there's still a driven part of me that wants them to be the best in whatever they choose to go into. So I still push standards. I still want them to be top, but I won't make them spend the whole weekend going to extra classes and things like that. The education system in Singapore is one of the best in the world. So I'm hoping that what they do Monday to Friday is already better than what we have in a lot of other countries. So I just want the creativity to go with the maths and the science. And what they go into, we shall see. At the moment, they've got an interest in science, but they're only 4 years old. So we'll see where that goes. But we bring in different styles. I think the discipline of the East and the flexibility of the West, if you can get somewhere in that middle ground, then that's the ideal route. Yeah. But I think I should just point out that I think what we're seeing in Singapore is also a generational change in education. So historically, you learn. So you went to school here, is that correct, or at least your secondary school years?
I went through the big three of every Singaporean son. I went through O levels, I went through
Yeah.
national service, so I went through PSLE. So yes,
Okay.
I
So
am as much.
even PLSE, yeah. Okay. So you sort of back even 10, 15 years ago, you almost learn to pass exams, and Singapore does that brilliantly. Like top two
Yeah.
or three in the world in exam results. It's starting to change where rather than just saying these are the questions in the last 10 years, it's more about the application of that knowledge. And that's what I really want. I want the discipline of learning and education. But what do we do with that? Because if there's anything I saw a slight gap at work with, it's handling the curveballs where there's no precedent. So you come across something that we've never seen before. And I worked with a financial product where it could change on every day. So it's like, well, if we've never seen that product, we've never seen that event happen before, we can't think about what we've learned in the past to deal with it. You've got to use a collective knowledge and skill set to try to solve. And that's a shift that's slowly starting to happen in Singapore schools. I think it'll be a generational shift, but yeah, I think that will be a real benefit if we can get the discipline with the application, and then you've got the top success. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Mm.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned for your kids, what you imagine
Mm.
is for creativity, for them to go with the hands-on application. Yeah.
Mm.
How do you feel though your company Anagram has
Mm.
actually been facilitating such a concept to be applied
Good.
to your
Yeah.
clients?
Good question. We try to take the training we do at a level where people could go into work the next day and use some of it. Now, do I use some academic theory? Yes. Do we use some models that other people have come up with? Yes. Do we have our own models? Yes. We use a blend. But even if you use a theory from someone else, it doesn't mean anything to the people in the workshop unless they understand how it could impact their own work. So that's what we're always looking for is, okay, this is a model about agile leadership. It sounds good. It's a buzzword, but how does it help you in your job next week? So in the same way, we're trying to give them the knowledge, but the context of why it's important, how they can use it in their job, examples of my own career, examples of people I coach now, of companies that I train. So we can show that, yes, it's a theory, but it's a theory that if it's applied, can actually work in a corporate or government setting. Yeah. So it's not easy, but we try doing that the whole time. And that's our basic philosophy, is relatable, pragmatic training that helps generate change.
Okay, good. Okay. Earlier with the last part you mentioned on change, yeah?
Mm.
How do you feel the different generations can work? Because nowadays is, I guess this was summed up by a friend of mine who says that what COVID has done is to create an era of unpredictability. Is because nowadays what we used to believe from maybe around 5 years back is already changed. In fact, with technology itself, works that has always been traditionally done one way is done differently
Mm.
now.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel though that can be a certain mediation whereby different generations can work well with each other? Because, nowadays times are changing, but of course,
Mm.
people still has to keep on living, right?
I think there's really two questions in there, or two parts
Was
to
it?
that. One is looking at, I guess, generational differences in the approach to change, and has change been sort of accelerated or triggered by COVID, or was it already happening?
Right.
Um, to me, I guess constant change has been happening for longer than COVID. It was happening 5, 7 years before that. 15 years ago, the term VUCA came out, and everyone loved the term VUCA, which was volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it's like, well, this is the world we're now in. It was actually the US military who came up to it. And everyone in my industry went, yes, we'll apply that into corporates because the world is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. But even with digital transformation and this sort of what we might call Industry 4.0, that's when things started to speed up. And that's when generational differences in their approach to change was first highlighted. What COVID did was accelerated it. So it was already there. So even before COVID, for the sort of 3 or 4 years prior, we were doing a lot of work around design thinking and innovation, and we come up with different approaches. And if you look at stereotypes, I know this isn't everyone, so I'll just say it's a stereotype. The older generation tends to be more reluctant to change. They've often, especially if you look at Singapore, maybe in a government ministry, they've been in the job for 20 years or 25 years. They're comfortable, they're happy, they're experts in their role. Change can sort of ruin that, and the digitalization can ruin that. The fear of being out of a job due to a robot, those things were all very real. So those are things we were hearing a lot of. The other stereotype, that the younger generation are more open to change because they've grown up using technology. And it's true, but sometimes that appetite for change and technology can get in the way of learning the business and the actual underlying job. It's like, yeah, we'll just do it on our mobile. It's like, yeah, but what's the risks of putting it onto the mobile? So, that's where sometimes I'm supporting Gen X here, it seems, just because I sort of am one. I guess that range have hopefully the balance, even though we can still be as stubborn as anyone else, the balance of having the experience of almost a hard graft and the work and just getting the work done, and hopefully being flexible enough to adopt the technology to make that job a lot easier. So COVID has really sped everything up. Things that used to take 3 to 5 years have taken 6 to 9 months. And whether it's realistic to keep up that speed of change, I don't think so. It's been leading to all the anxiety and stress that we hear about. Employee wellness has come to the forefront a lot more, and that's a positive thing. But it's also being partly created by the constant change, by the being forced to work from home, split shifts, not seeing colleagues, rapid automation. All of those things at some point have to settle down. I think the challenge for businesses are, how do we keep the improvement in speed of change, but do it at a more sort of stable pace, something that is more viable than what it is now. But you'll still get the generational differences a little bit. You'll still get people who fear for their jobs because it's speeding up more, it's remote working. I must admit, when I left corporate life to do this job, one of the things I really missed was the office environment. I missed going in and seeing colleagues, every day, the banter of the office, the jokes, the familiarity, the friends. Now I work in an office here, and I sort of look around, and there's a family who I can see a lot. Yes, that's a lot of benefits. I can watch my kids grow up in some ways, but it'd be nice to get someone older than 4 to speak with at times. Yeah.
Yep. I can relate to that. I can relate to that to an extent, is because I love my parents and I've been living away from them for years, but at the same time now I'm back here. I'm happy I get to see them, I get to take care of them, but the thing is that you kind of do miss the outside kind of environment whereby you
Yeah.
can actually interact or you can learn something new. And that is something that I can
Yeah.
totally relate to.
Yeah.
And I guess this is something that people need to take note of moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if, going back to one of your earlier questions, if you're in a different country trying to make that switch, then yeah, you have to work a bit harder at getting a new network. So for me, it's a lot around the Speakers Association here and other trainers, people who are also entrepreneurs, people who have got a similar thing where they've got the flexibility, but the downside of the flexibility is the loss the office environment. Yeah.
Huh. Okay, that's a good no, that's a good thing to point out. Though I've interviewed several members of Asia Professional Speakers Singapore,
Mm.
and I never did hear that. So that's something new.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed out something from your wife. Woohoo! Notification. Okay.
Yes, and but apparently they are actually watching now. So Luke and Maya, no extra tuition unless you fail at school. So continue to work hard, or I'll send you off for weekend classes. Yeah,
You don't
I
want that,
prefer them to
guys.
just play sports on weekends. That's what I'd prefer. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. All right, Mark. I have two final questions for you.
Mm.
So we've talked about, of course, your success so far, but I want
Mm.
to balance it out a bit because the thing is that when we put ourselves in social media
Mm.
in camera like this, people would expect like a total perfection image of
Mm.
sorts. I don't really like it. So, have you ever experienced a significant learning opportunity, or as people might call it, a failure? And
Mm.
maybe when you first started your business, or even when you were still part of corporate life, or even when
Mm.
you transition yourself to a new kind of environment. And how do you overcome it?
Oh, lots. There's lots of things. Some are even small. I often tell a story in my workshop, which is true. Um, Being English and having lived in Australia for a few years, I tend to have a dry, sarcastic sense of humor. And in
I
Australia,
can, yeah, I can
yeah,
testify to that. My former boss is actually from Surrey. So,
yeah, oh,
yeah.
right. That's where I was born and brought up. Yes, I went to
Okay.
University of Surrey, so I know that area very well. Um, so I have that sense of humor, and even though it's not everyone's preferred choice, they normally understand when I'm being sarcastic or really dry. But when I came to Singapore, I thought I'd researched things, I'd spoken to people, what's the culture, what's people like, how's this, what do I need to look out for. I didn't talk about humor. So I came into the office, which we were growing out, and I came in with that sort of sense of humor. And then I saw these faces kind of blank and started to do things that I'd said sarcastically. It's like, not sarcastically as in to patronize, just I was trying to show my humor, my lightheartedness, without thinking about the fact that, maybe there's more respect for hierarchy and meritocracy. I did have I was a sort of boss, and therefore they listened to what I say, and the trust wasn't there yet. So the relationship wasn't there. So I couldn't come in with the same type of humor until I'd built up the trust. So that was an easy learning point there. Um, from a trainer's side, you talk about social media and things. Let's be honest. Most social media is what you choose it to be. So people spend a lot of time curating a social media persona that isn't always real. I'm not that active on social media because I find some of it a little bit fake. I don't like self-promotion much. As any trainer or speaker, if they claim they don't sometimes have imposter syndrome, they're probably lying. So that does get you, especially in the early days. Now I've been in the industry a lot longer, over 350 clients, sort of corporate clients. The confidence is there a lot more. Whereas in the early days, you get a bit of imposter syndrome. Why should these people listen to me? What have I got to say that they can actually learn from? And that's just natural sort of nerves. So you get that more in the early days, even though you still do have stuff of value. You sometimes wonder, oh, we've got some MDs coming along. Are they really going to learn anything from me? Whereas in the corporate environment, they'd be more senior. Now I don't think that way, but it was certainly sometimes there in the early days, or for those who are newer to the industry. How do you overcome it? You have to think about why you're actually there. Why is someone either asking you to speak or paying you to speak? In an ideal world, we're professional speakers and trainers. My my sole income is through this industry. So I can't do, we're doing this because we're like connected. It's an interesting topic, but we're not going to exchange fees. That's for corporate clients. I still need to get paid by them. So sometimes you just have to remind yourself, why has they even chosen you? You're chosen normally because you have something that other people don't. In theory, people are paying for us to deliver value. And at some point, either through watching videos or reading a book or receiving your proposal, referral from someone else, they deem that you have something of value that they don't have internally. And that's really the confidence mind game in some ways, is you have to know your stuff, you have to deliver, but you have to have the confidence that you have something, or you have an ability to demonstrate something in a way that creates a learning opportunity they won't get in their everyday jobs. So, or if you're speaking at a conference, you've got the ability to inspire or spark thoughts or open or close a conference in a way that other people don't. And that's where sometimes people battle internally with imposter syndrome and nerves versus I do have something to give. And I guess to bridge the two scenarios of kind of humor versus am I the right person, having peers or mentors or people around you helps. So, my wife will watch a lot of my performances and give me feedback on stuff at work. I'd build up relationships with people at my level. So they could say, that's not going to work here, or maybe try a different approach, or things like that. If you don't have someone around you who can give you feedback, you're not going to change or even know that you need to change. So have people around you in whatever environment that can talk frankly with you, because they might expose a blind spot that you don't have or you're not aware of.
That's okay. Shout out to Liana for that. Well, it
Yeah.
she well, in a sense, you lead the family forward. She keeps you guys. Whereas she keeps you in the present, in a sense. Or yeah, I'll come up with something better on that for the
She
caption.
drives the whole business side. So we are 100% into Anagram Group. So she drives the marketing and sales, and I turn up and talk. That's how the business works. Yeah.
Okay, that's a wonderful partnership. That's a wonderful partnership. Okay,
Yeah.
this is gonna be my last question.
Sure.
I want to end it with gratitude. Is that what have you been thankful for your life so far? Uh, it can be anything. It can be whether in your work life or your family life. This is up
Yeah.
to you.
Well, obviously thankful for kids and my wife. I obviously have to say that, but it's truthful. On a wider scale, I've been thankful for a couple of things. One, a stable upbringing. I had the classic sort of middle England, middle class upbringing, but that gave me stability. Yes, history crew. Yes, we can all. Yeah,
Your
we
wife.
speak that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I understand enough. So, yeah, I had a very stable upbringing. So I'm very thankful for the way that I was brought up. It wasn't flashy. It was just, it was good. It was fun. It was sports. It was education. I'm thankful for the ability to travel. Not saying that England was bad, but I've benefited and grown from exposure to different cultures. And even as a trainer, I think I've probably delivered training or speeches in about 19 countries now. So every time you do that, you learn something else about the world, or perspectives, or opinions, or struggles, or challenges, or sort of benefits. And that continues to help me grow and learn. And I'm also thankful for the corporate life, because that gave me not just a knowledge, but it gave me the skill set that I have in many ways. And I wouldn't be in Singapore if I wasn't in that industry. I wouldn't have, yes, I face lots of challenges, but also that's what helps me hopefully help people overcome challenges is because I went through them myself. So I think I've been pretty fortunate up to this point. Not a multimillionaire yet, but it's not about that. I didn't buy Bitcoin at the right price. So, it's not
Yet.
perfect.
The keyword
But
is yet. The keyword here
yeah,
is yet, everybody.
yeah. The joy of this industry is we have flexibility. And if I was still in my old job, I wouldn't have seen my kids much until the weekends because I would have been in the office at 7:38. I'd be home at 7:38, and that if I wasn't going out. So now I've seen all the major milestones. I can help out during the week and stuff, and then we have our busy spells where we just get our heads down and work. But the flexibility has been fantastic over the last few years for sure.
All right. Okay. That's actually my last question. So first off, I need to send a thanks to Liana for being very supportive for this episode. I love your comments. Uh,
Yeah,
Other than that, we actually will. I actually need to send thanks to the likes from Mr. David Tong, my buddy Ben Vogel, and those who actually like the announcements, who left their likes for the announcement, and will be tuning in later, like Miss Kanako Sua, Mr.
yeah.
Puji, and Miss Estrelita Gracia. So last but not least, I need to thank Mark for making his time today, and yeah, I actually like to pay tribute in the earlier part of whenever the episode began, but this particular one is very personal to me. So I recently lost a cousin of mine, Stephen, who was actually one of the few who experienced life growing up in Singapore. And as a kid, he is like a big brother to me. So I love you, bro.
Mm.
May God rest his soul. And yeah, other than that, Mark, is there anything you want to say?
Well, I'm sorry to hear about you losing your friend. Um, I think any
Cousin, cousin actually.
cousin, sorry, cousin. Any final words? I think if anyone's watching, I just hope that both countries find their way out of this pandemic, but try to find the opportunities. I know it's sometimes difficult to find the opportunities in these circumstances, but they are out there. Is it more time to learn some new skills, to take a course, to write the book, to spend time with a family? It's not been the easiest 18 months, but we have to look for those sort of the pros that come out of it, and sort of keep motivated, keep sane, and hopefully the world gets back to normal at some point soon.
Yep, I share that sentiment. All right, everyone. This is the end of episode 96 of Global Citizens. Future of work. Is your business ready for the digital age? So please take care of yourselves. Hopefully, the remaining part of 2021 will be better for you. So, and with
Yeah.
that, do take care and stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you.